Alright, we'll address that.
I don't see why it couldn't.
Okay.
But if you could point that out.
Okay, sure. Alright, let's see. Going down to your plan, what particular function is the EPA going to serve under your
Well, right now the EPA serves as an agency that regulates the pesticides that involve themselves in GM foods.
Okay.
The FDA would be the authority to actually ban the food itself. However, we're going to use the EPA and the USDA as enforcement mechanisms since they currently have a regulation part in it.
Okay, so the EPA is going to help enforce by doing what?
Well, they won't regulate GM foods the way they do now.
Okay. Alright, would you agree that pesticides are harmful to the environment and potentially harmful to people?
Sure.
Okay. Alright, let's see. How many different GM crops are grown now in the U.S.? Just ballpark.
Different kinds of GM foods?
Yeah,
I don't
different
know.
types. Okay. Okay, thanks.
I'll take a little prep. You can keep running. Okay. I'm ready. The way I hear my opponent's case, what I am seeing almost makes me think that, I don't know, you might see a third world dictator or somebody come out and all out ban the use of a food supply. I mean, that's the kind of thing I expect from, oh wait, sorry, Hugo Chavez did that in 2004. He banned GMOs because it was threatening his food supply. My opponents are using a style of government that is absolutely unacceptable, which is that the government is mandating what kinds of food you can choose to eat. The government is mandating that because 37 people died in the 1980s because they ingested a drug that was meant to be a dietary supplement among the first uses of GMOs. That is literally the only example of a health threat that my opponents have offered, and they have not offered a single piece of evidence to back up their claim that the ban should be enacted. So I don't think it's unjust at all to say that this is the kind of action that a tyrannical government would take, and I hope to establish that and provide you with a safer alternative in our counterplan. My partner Amy will be addressing some of the safety concerns of GMOs, but I'll be mainly going over the initial framework for the one in C. You're going to need some extra pieces of paper. So let's start with topicality. Topicality is on food policy. The standards here are twofold. First, education. Cases should fit into the resolution so that the hard work we put into research pays off and we become experts in the environment, the subject area. Second, framers' intent. The authors of the resolution clue us in to what we're supposed to debate. It has to do with the environment. The violations here are clear. The first one is that it's a food safety case. We can tell that because that's the threats my opponents are pointing out to both the economy and to health. The second violation is its effects topical. Look back at your flow and tell me the next time after definitions you hear the word environment mentioned. It's not. Their case isn't about the environment. The impacts are first, this is an a priori issue. My opponents have to address the resolution before their case can even be considered after that. Second, that our counterplan is not topical. Let me be clear here. If our opponents agree to give us our food policy counterplan without arguing topicality under their skewed definition, then we will drop topicality completely and not run the critique we have prepared. So what I'm saying is we're about to change food policy. Under their interpretation, that would be environmental policy. We don't think it is at all. To uphold the educational value in this round, we hope that the affirmative team will just accept our counterplan, which clashes with theirs, and let's just debate the case out point for point, and drop topicality altogether. Let's move on now to the criteria. My opponents have, without giving you a single justification for, presented a value and two criteria. I'm going to oppose that and give you some reasons to value something different altogether. First, our counter value. Rather than the quality of life, we value life itself for three reasons. First, it's not selfish. It's something that U.S. policy has actually said we want to do to promote lives of people in developing countries. Second, it focuses on a necessary goal. You can't have quality of life unless you have life, so it's necessary. Third, my opponents only touch health. This is critical. If you notice their application of quality of life, they're saying the government chooses for you that the only thing that makes your life qualitative is not that you eat bloomin' onions, but that you would be healthy. There are all kinds of other things that go into quality of life. There are also counter criteria. My opponent's criteria don't make any sense because they aren't criteria. Criteria are how you achieve an end. My opponents have given you goals as criteria. They have basically pulled from political campaign speech for dummies, I mean politicians, by saying, we want to create jobs. What we want to know is how. How do our opponents create health? How do they create economic benefit? They haven't really offered that in their criteria. We offer three counter criteria. First, scientific incentives. Science should be incentivized to grow. Biotechnology and our food should have an incentive at the end that is possibly profitable by banning even the testing of it. As my opponents do, the science of biotechnology has zero incentive in the United States. Second, the precautionary principle. Let's apply guilty until proven innocent to new scientific developments, but let's not ban them out altogether. Let's use a precautionary approach, which my opponent's evidence actually advocates rather than their plan. Third of all, consumer choice. We as consumers and farmers in the United States should have the ability to follow where they believe the free market is leading them, and knowing full well what kind of food they are eating, choose that. In this light, let's go offer the following counter plan. The counter plan is very simple, and it will both solve the harms and solve all the disadvantages. Our mutually exclusive counter plan has two mandates. First, we're going to require GMO labeling. This means that where it says nutrition facts on the side of food that you purchase, if it is a GMO product, it will have to say it is a GMO product. Our second mandate is we're going to apply the precautionary principle to genetically modified organisms. This means two things. First, GMOs will be presumed guilty, unsafe, unmarketable until they are proven innocent, just like the pharmaceutical review policy and just like my opponent's evidence is calling for. Second of all, cross-pollination mitigation plans will be a necessary component of passing the FDA review process. So a cross-pollination mitigation plan will be required before GMOs can be marketed. The agency will be Congress and the President, and enforcement will be the FDA and the USDA. There are two reasons to prefer this case. First, the criteria will be better upheld through something that upholds the precautionary principle, that upholds choice, and that upholds scientific incentives. Second of all, because the disadvantages will be avoided. Disadvantages will be further elaborated by my partner. Let's go look at their case real quick, just in order. I want to look mostly at their evidence. Their opening quote said, until biotechnologists can prove safety, we should not have GMOs. Well, our plan supports that, and that evidence in no way, shape, or form supported a ban. It said, let's be safer, and that's what our plan does. Next, if we look down to their justifications of human health, the A point, they said GM consumption is unavoidable. That's not at all what their evidence actually said. Their evidence said certain crops, some of the time, cross-pollinate with other crops. They did not in any way establish that every piece of food you eat is somehow contaminated with GM food. Their evidence doesn't say that. Second of all, it doesn't advocate their plan in any way, shape, or form. Nowhere did that evidence call for a ban. Our plan calls for a mitigation plan because there's technology available to prevent cross-pollination among GM and non-GM foods. That technology is already available, and they'll be using it under our counter plan. Their B point of vague standards, I have three problems with. First, it didn't ever say that vagueness of standards was the problem. It said the complete lack thereof, and it said the voluntary nature of what is in place. Our plan is required and provides standards that are no longer vague. So we actually solve their evidence better. Looking at their